Hi everybody, good morning. So I'm sharing my screen. Please confirm once you are able to see the screen. I've done the sharing. Please confirm once you are able to see the screen by raising your hand. Raise your hand whoever is able to see the screen. Okay. I'm not able to see anybody raising the hand. Is it visible screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So today, yesterday we talked about three important components apart from the things. One is input, how to bind the value in the input using the NG model. And the NG model, we understood that it requires the form module. Second, we have noticed, I'm just going back to the code. We talked about checkbox, HTML. So we talked about input with NG model as being the binding candidate. And we have also seen two-way binding, how to do a two-way binding and how it will work when you have a single binding, that is only input binding. If you are not having an input binding, there is no question of output binding. So that is also there. So with this different combination, we have seen how the param name is nothing but a declared value in the component. So this HTML and this .ts file, this is closely associated. This talk to each other continuously and frequently. And how frequent it is, it depends on changes. They are all using a subscription concept where any change is observed in the TS file through code or anywhere, HTML will react to that. HTML is asynchronous in that sense. It is always in synchronous with TS file. Asynchronous in nature. That means it is not like a polling or anything. If any change happens to the TS, this will get reflected. So, or it will wait for the change. As soon as it sees the change in the TS, if param name changes, the NG model reacts to that. So that is how it is closely associated. This association is closely to be monitored or to be tracked. Second, we have seen checkbox. How do we do the checkbox? Various attributes of checkbox. And checkbox, we understood that it generates an event. And what is the inside the event? This also we have seen. There are two important things. One is event.value, another is event.source. The source is having multiple properties of a checkbox that includes ID being one of the property. So these properties are part and parcel of the event. That event is getting reflected onto the TS and that event is getting triggered on change. Whenever you do a change, the event gets triggered. This we have seen it under mat checkbox. And mat checkbox also requires a module, and that module name is mat checkbox module. That module name is to be included into the app module, mat checkbox module. Next, we have seen select. Select is basically a drop down. The drop down here is called select. All this, whether it is select or whether it is an input, we put that underneath mat form field because that gives the structure to that map form field. Whether do I need to use mat form field, it is up to you to decide. You want the predefined CSS, that is the CSS that is material design uses, you can use that mat form field or whatever. You can otherwise manage everything with the div itself, then you don't need a Angular material as a whole. Angular material is nothing but predefined components, predefined available of CSS, which you can directly use so that your coding time can get reduced. That's the idea behind Angular material. Material design uses fonts, material fonts. Material design uses default CSS. There are four types of CSS he supports. Two of dark theme, two of light theme. Light theme, where what we are using is indigo, amber, that purple. So that is the one which we are using. There is one more available. So like that, dark theme is also, there are two components available. When you install the CSS, you will know the name of the theme and you can map it. You can map it at the later time also. That mapping can be done through Angular JSON as a file. Angular JSON file, you can map this deep purple, amber is what we have used. We can change here whatever the style sheet you want to use. This is available underneath material pre-built themes. Underneath Angular, @Angular node modules. So you can change the name here, automatically the CSS gets changed. So this is possible here to use it. So it is all available as part of pre-built themes, and all these configurations are available under Angular JSON. So more about this Angular JSON, we'll come to that as we go, as we get into the session. So we'll take more on that area. So that is how the CSS becomes impact on the material design. And material design, the advantage of material design is you are able to use the predefined CSS. Apart from that, you can use any number of CSS. The loading of the CSS always happens. The first, whatever the way you have given the data here, the loading of the CSS happens in that order. So for example, if there is a same name available over here and here, so that style CSS will override the deep purple amber CSS. If you are giving the same class name or same method name, the way you load the CSS, the latest one take the priority over the previous one. You can check all that by creating two different CSS having the same class name, and load the CSS one after the other, and then check the how it has the impacts. The CSS that is given here, that is the highest priority that will take. This will be the latest one, and all other things will be after that. There are certain components where the CSS doesn't get loaded from this level. It gets preloaded upfront. It doesn't change that when it comes to CSS of this. So we need to understand which will get affected by this CSS, which will get affected by experience will teach you. It is very difficult to remember all this. Experience will teach you where which CSS is getting applied, which CSS is not getting applied. Okay, so certain things are affected by the global CSS, not by the component level CSS. But component level CSS is the last CSS that gets loaded. As soon as the component loaded, it gets loaded. Because of that, component is always a subclass. Global class takes precedence over this one, that is always available. Whereas whatever you are seeing it here under Angular JSON, this hierarchy is very important. Whichever is loaded first, that will take less priority compared to the one that loaded in the next one. So that you have to be careful. So these are all the place where you can maintain your CSS, or you can have your own CSS as well. That is also you can add, and you can put it underneath assets table. That is also possible. We are doing it underneath assets table, and you can add that CSS as part of style sheet as well. All these are possible. So with that, these are all what we have seen. So map module configuration is very important, and we have seen mat select also. Mat select is nothing but a drop down. Drop down we have seen through CurdRise, that is hard coded options. Another is through dynamic options. Dynamic options is coming from, right now it is coming from an array. This is coming from an array here. This also we have seen it. Tomorrow or later date, we'll see how to get from DB as well. So how to get it from DB, dynamically load the options here. Right now it is coming from array. Yesterday I given one exercise, how to get the value of mat select from UI. That means I want to preset the value. Anybody done that job? Anybody please raise your hand if anybody did that yesterday or after the class. Anybody did that? Please raise your hand. Nobody? You can feel free to talk. Just give whoever is done something with whatever we are learning, just raise your hand, unmute yourself and talk. What you have done, or we have around 3 weeks or 4 weeks covered. Angular material itself is second week running. So what is that? Are you able to practice? Are you able to do something? Can you please interact? Can you just say something? Anybody, please unmute yourself and you can please. Rajesh, can they talk or is it not allowed? We are going with the radio button. Radio button, drop down, checkbox, input box. These are all most button. These are all most used component in any of the UI. Any UI you take, without this, there will not be any UI. Right? A button can be in the form of icon, all that we'll see as we go. A button can be in the form of icon, a button can be a button itself. A drop down can have a multi-select, single select. If it is multi-select, you just have to enable here multiple. If I enable it with multiple, then automatically this select box will act as a multiple selection box. So I have not started the server. I'll start the server. D drive, that is my directory. FS, it is there. So I'll try to now start the service. It is ngserve. Default it is ngserve, which will start the entire service. So these 5 components, if you are able to learn and if you are able to use it, then other components are comparatively at the lower, rarely used comparatively. But if it is in use, it will be once configured, it is done. That page may require. In that sense, chipset is one kind of a component which frequently might be used. There is a possibility. So table grid, inside table grid, designing the inline edit boxes, that's another component that is generally in use. So understanding for all the components, understanding the mat prefix. Mat prefix is nothing but it is default class, material classes enabled by default, and it is part and parcel of module. You need to have the module enabled. For radio button, I have already enabled mat radio module. So it is part of Angular material radio. Please note, forms module is not part of material, it is part of the Angular itself. Material is one part of the Angular. Right? It is an additional component to the Angular. The advantage of material, very simple. It is having additional CSS. All components are pre-built components available for you to use. Is it mandatory to use? It is not mandatory. You can have a material data added, but you don't use any of the components. That is up to you to decide. Okay. Now with that, I just started the service, compiled successfully. I'll go back to the UI, localhost. This is where my service is. So I just selected multiple. You can see here a checkbox. That is multiple selection. Multiple selection. I enable, closed it. If I go back to my right click, inspect element. If I go back to my console, you can see array of 3. The value selected, multiple values selected. Because of that, it is coming up. Selected value comes as array of 3. Multiple will have that array. If I remove it, only one I have. Close it. Then you can see array of 1. You can see array of 1. So array of 2. When one where I unselected, there was a selected value. So I can also trigger an event when the closure. On closure of this menu button, that is the top menu that is opening up, I can, on closure of this also, I can trigger instead of selection change. That is also allowed. Okay. This is on multiple selection and single selection. Today we go with radio button. So radio button, this is the reference, my mat radio module, angular material radio, which I have already added. Overview, simple HTML. This is my basic radio button. Copy, paste, post it underneath a div. I take a div, go to my code, go to the code, go to the HTML, create a div, align it as center. Align it in the center, then copy paste the code that we just copied from there. So there is a mat radio group, mat radio button, value 1, value 2, option 1, option 2. So this is what is getting displayed, and this is the selected value. So I just added this. So here also I can give a ng model because I want to know the selected value. For that, what is the output I want to give? That is coming from API under mat radio group. That means I'm configuring it under mat radio group. This is the level. Underneath that, what is the input allowed? What is the output allowed? Output is change, and it is an event emitter. So that means we will know what change has happened. I put a change here. Any output, I use the small same normal braces inside, give function name. That means it is calling that function. You can assign it to a variable. Anything is possible on radio selection, right? I just give it as a function event emitter. Event. I call this, go back to my code, radio on change radio. I just changed it. Event is my input. Radio button changed. I'm just printing the event. Top also I'm printing the event. Bottom also I'm printing the event. Let us see how it looks like. Save all. Done. Now I come back to the code. It is getting executed. It gets compiled. There is no problem. If module not added, etc., there is a possibility that it may give an error or that particular functionality will not work at all. So radio button is, I'll just see the UI. Now you can see radio button 1, radio button 2, option 1. I have selected option. Default, you can see the color is amber. Either one it is selected, not like a checkbox where I can select both the checkbox, whereas here it is either this or that. So if I do that, just see what happens here. Value 2 is the source, value is 2, that is what you have selected. Value is 1. If I go back to value 1, you can see that value is 1. Radio source is there, value is there. So which value you have selected? I want to change this color. Simple, very simple. Go back, code, go back, code, come to the HTML. You give the color, what color you want to use. Color primary. Either I can give it at this level. I'm not sure whether color can be defined at this level or not. I'm just checking that whether it is applies to all the group by default. If I give it at the group level, I've compiled the code. Yes, it has now color is applied to all that. So another thing I have told you to do a div, child div, that is child data, whether it is button or class or whatever. Please note, if you are changing it at the tag level, any class if you create, it is applicable for all the button. If you are giving specific class, you need to use the class attribute, class equal to give the specific class. Multiple classes are supported with a space. Multiple classes are supported with the space. Style sheet overrules the class because style sheet is the last that is getting applied. So style sheet overrule the class. Whenever there is a conflict, there is called important. The important will overrule that, but this is not advisable component in the current trending of the CSS. Important means it will overrule the any other classes that is defined for this margin right within this button or anywhere. Okay, so you can give the spacing and other, that is left to you to give that. Whereas the way the radio button appears, one outer ring, one smaller ring, right? By default, the selection is without only one ring. Creating a CSS for this, it's not easy thing. So that is why the material design is very economical. So you don't have to pre-design this. So you are able to change the color in without any problem. And you see a background, light circle background with a slight lighter blue. That is also automatically taken care by the CSS of that on selection. On selection, how that changes. Right? There is a this is at the level of class, and you are clicking onto the what do you call primary color, primary change you have given. You can also set predefined value as simple as that. You go to the components, default radio button. This is the same thing for applicable for even default radio button is button is 1, right? 1 being the value. So default radio button is the parameter name. This parameter name, I can pass it on here, right, as a value. It is basically a square braces two-way binding. Value equal to default radio button. I give that as a value because it is also a string. So I give it as a string here. Radio button. So I give it that value as 1, save it. Right, default selection, it is giving some value. Select option, event off of the two-way binding value are not bound to the same target. It is not bound to the same target, it is saying. Value default radio button. Okay. I'll just come here. This is the value option 1. Option 1. Oh, here also that is an input, right? Input is also okay. That is if we're not giving it as a value here. That is okay. Whereas here we pass the dynamic value, whereas we are passing the default value. Let me check.
Sir, is it NG model?
NG model. Yeah. I'll just check this. Two-way binding. Let us check that. Yeah, possible. I'm getting confused. That is okay. Yeah, it is clear. That is compilation is done. Now, if I go to the UI, it should by default selected option was selected. I make it as 2 now. I make it as 2 here. I make it as 2 as a value. 2 as a value. Right? I make it as 2 as a value. Then if I save it, compile it, it will come as option 2 as a default selection. And if you see the default selection, that arrow, that background, it was not showing. That background was not showing. Right? These are all, some people want that background to show. That might become a challenge, right? That might, you may have to do some more work on that to make sure that that arrow is coming. If I do it like a click event, I'm getting that background. Whereas by default selection, I'm not getting that background. As long as it is selected, that background is appearing, right? And space between these two. So you can add that margin 16 pixel or whatever. You can add for the consistency purpose. You can add that style sheet as well. That is also allowed. I want you to explore the, make sure you explore the child things. I will not teach you that, but I'll be asking that to be implemented at the later part of time. So that may be for your project also, it may be a requirement that we'll be asking you that. We may not teach you that, but we may be asking you that. I want you to extra learn from the possibilities. Okay. So what we have done now, we have seen radio button as well. The next important component is how to basic 5 or 6 components we have seen, like input, this one, uh, button, the radio button, checkbox, drop down. These 5 components we have seen. Now we want to collate. We want to do a design of, assume that I want to design a login page. So login page, what I need? I need input for sign in page. I need an input for say whatever the username I want to give. I want an input for username. I want to give a password. These two are inputs. Then there may be a checkbox for whether you have our privacy policy, you agree to our terms and conditions, something like that. One checkbox may be there. After that, sign up button. Sign up button is basically you are registering yourself. So registering, you need all these 4 candidates. One is button, we have seen. We have seen input box. We have seen checkbox. These 3 are important candidates for a sign up. After that, if you want to pass a logo, you may need an image. So image, you need to tag an image that we'll see little later. Once first we'll make it. So all this put together called one form. So the form is nothing but in that form element, I'm grouping all these 3 elements. One is 2 input boxes, 1 checkbox, 1 button. I'm grouping together to make a form. In that, button can be outside because button is an event. Whereas the 3 are the input candidates. 2 input box and 1 checkbox is an input candidate. So these 3 can be made as a form candidate. That means if 3 values are there, I can choose this form as a valid form. If any username can be multiple things. User can be any type of input type. It can be a simple name without a space or anything, or it can be a email type. That means I have to check the email format. So that is also a possibility. So checking that is all validators, whether I'm giving a right input or not. Then there is called password. Password is always maskable. So I don't want to see the password visible to all the user. So I want to mask the password. That means a password field has to be a different type, not normal input type. So these are all where the type concept is used in the input. By default, it is supported by the any HTML as well. HTML type, if you select as a password, by default, it will not display the UI with contents plain text. So how first is, so understanding the form. Form is nothing but a wrapper. Form is nothing but a wrapper. The form has multiple entities. Form means a form to bind the data between a form and the backend code. I don't need a ng model. I can use form control itself. There are one is form control is there, another is form control name is there. One is called reactive form, another is called normal form controls. Another is called reactive form. Dynamically, I'm creating the form. So dynamically, if I create a form, then it is called reactive form in Angular. Uh, Static form, that means this form will not change, like the one that I'm saying, username, password, checkbox for conditions, terms and conditions, right? And one button, this will not change. Then it is normal form, it is a static form. So one is called reactive form, another is called static form. Reactive forms are those where the form content is dynamically changing based on the code or whatever. That type of form is called dynamic reactive form. Normal form is form control. So if we are using forms module, So let us now create a forms module. I'll go below and start creating the form. I want to put a horizontal line to this. I just want to put a horizontal line. This horizontal line will just have a break between two entities. Hope compilation is safe. Compilation is, there is no problem with the compilation. There is no problem. If I just go back, horizontal rule, HR is for horizontal rule. You can see a horizontal rule there. There is one end-to-end line that has come. So below this, I'm going to design a form, keeping a form wrapper, and put all the things for that is required for a login page. That is required for a login page I want to put. So how do you declare a form? A form can be declared either as an independent candidate. I go back here. First is I can declare it's a form like this as an independent candidate. Inside that, I can have a normal input, right, with whatever ng model or whatever. Second, one more input. This input, I call it as ID. ID, I use the word password. This input, I use the word name, email. Email is my ID of that input, right? Type, if I put type, I can use it as a simple text. It's a text. If I give here type, I input it as password. Password type, it is a by default available. Now I'm not using any materialistic view or anything. It's a simple form created with the one checkbox. Input, I think input type checkbox. Input type equal to checkbox. That is how the checkbox is defined originally. In materialistic view, it is different. Input checkbox, and then I want a button. So that you understand the button, I say sign up. Checkbox, I call it as I have to input type. Okay, previous input, I have not closed the tag. Okay, input type checkbox, I put it underneath a div. Underneath the div, span. Underneath span, not div, span. Span. Inside, I call it as sign up. I call it as a sign up. So span checkbox, not sign up. Accept terms and conditions. Right? Accept terms and conditions. I just given a simple form. All these are HTML candidate one. I hope there is no error. Let us see that as well. Compilation, there is an error. Input not terminated for password. Input not terminated for password. Password is there. Here. Okay. This one. There is a mistake. Autofill is taking over. Command successfully done. If I go back to the UI, you can see here below. So there is a user email, there is a password, accept terms and condition is a checkbox, right? Sign up is the button. It is a normal way of doing it. Because input is a span candidate, because of that there is no space. I started with the form. Form is a that is why the form is below HR, because it is horizontal role is a block candidate. Form is a normal candidate. Input is a what do you call span candidate. There is no block candidate, and there is no space between this. This is the normal design that you do in case if you are not using an Angular material. If I'm trying to use the Angular material, the same form, if I use the mat form field appropriately, I can define it in a different way, the look and feel wise. For changing this look and feel, it is all coming from autocomplete. Okay, the one that is coming autocomplete. If I put here form align equals center, this will work. Align, this will work. There is no problem. But everything is on the same line. So if I want to make it as different line, one, I can enclose it as part of a div. That is one possibility. I can enclose it as part of the div. So div, enclose it, control X, end, control X, div. Right? And then I again enclose it as part of the div. This is one way. Another way is I can also define a CSS. That CSS says you make it as a block, not inline. Not inline, you make it as a block. So that is another way. Those decisions are your free will, your decision. It is nothing to do with any individual. Whether you want it in this way or you want it in that way, it is purely, you can see now. Right? I want to align a space. I want to give a space, top margin. So then style, margin, top, 16 pixel. So I just copy this everywhere. This is another way. So every div, I am giving a space for top margin. I save it. You can see the way it looks and feels changes. So slightly you are improving it. And you want a prefix. I want to know what field name it is. So I want to display a label, right? I want to display the label. That is where, whereas in the form field, you have taken care, all these are taken care. So when you declare as a form field, so I leave it at this now. If I want to do it, I can do it like this. Either div, span, inside the span, I give it as username, email, right? Then input, span closes. That means both are coming side by side. Right? I can put it like this also. Of course, it doesn't matter. Control, put it beside email, then input. Both are independent, but it will be side by side. Email says the whatever the box is coming, it is side by side. So that I can give now right margin, style, same. I'm just trying to, I don't want to confuse myself between a right margin and left margin. Everywhere I just wanted to follow. I always control my right. I don't want to control my left. So any tag, I want to control my right hand side. So right top margin I have given. It is not top margin. This is a right margin. I want to give a right margin. So you can see now. You can see a email is separate. Font is separate. Same way I want to give here again span, span closes. I use that before input, but I'll give it here instead of email. I'll give it here as a password. Capital, small, and all you need to take care. It is purely your control. System doesn't do anything. There is a capitalize. You can capitalize as well. So email is given. ID email. Okay. Here. Email space capital. So email capital space. Now this is not uniform. You can see there is a alignment problem. How to align it? That is the next step. So these are all happens without any material design. So you can see the difference between the top, the way the input box is shown, the way the bottom input box is. You are able to see the difference. So this is where the material design comes into picture. Right, the way the checkbox is shown on the top and the way the checkbox is shown here. You can see a slight alignment issue between the checkbox and accept terms and conditions. Whereas in the top, the checkbox and match checkbox, it's on the same line. Centering of the component. All this, if you are not using a material design, you need to take care through your CSS. What diff you get? Because it's an input box. As per him, it is an input box with a type as checkbox. This is an input box with the type as a checkbox. Right? Password, you can see by default it is showing as a star, star, star. I'm not controlling it. That one property takes care of that. The property takes care of making sure you are getting the star, not the actual value. So tomorrow we'll go and see how do we align all this in a proper way. So this is where the table plays a very important role, because you don't want this offset to be taken care. You don't want this offset. You want it proper. Either you can have a table structure or you can control it using width, because if you have a definite width, you can control it using that width. So all that you can do. Tomorrow we'll take up that. And then routing. Tomorrow a new thing that we'll learn also, routing. Because I don't want to use this page at all. I want to go to the separate page. Maybe this page, maybe the landing page. I want to click on sign up, sign in here. So or sign up here. Once I click on, I want to take you to the next page. So from there, I want to take you through the that option, right? That we'll consider tomorrow. We'll start on that. So this is what I just wanted to cover. Any questions for today? Please let me know. Any questions? Please let me know. If anybody not try to watch the videos, if you are not new to this class or anything, the code what you are working with available jitter, because I have compiled the components but the code is not opening in VS, so I'm able to practice that. I can give all this code here in your WhatsApp itself. I'll try to put it in the GitHub. I'll just talk to my team. I'll push the entire project in GitHub so that every day I can edit it and you can use it in your local. So that I'll make that available. So I'll just, this is part of, first I've given part of Angular HTML file. The second that I'm passing is the modules file.
Sir,
Third,
here we can't able to paste everything, sir. Partially only we could able to get a code.
Oh, is it so? Oh, okay, because of the length. Okay, then what I'll do is I'll give this today. Let us just discuss on how do I share that to the end user. This entire project I want it to be shared. If we can put it under GitHub, I could just put it across. Okay. We'll discuss and we'll let you know on that. So anyway, partial codes are coming, so it is not full code. It's of no use. Okay. I'll try my best to pass it on. Anyway, for time being, I'll just put it section by section. So imports are done. Now modules are done. Then I have HTML. I have two parts. I don't know which part is covered. Float, manual, input, appearance, H1, hello, mat, appearance, outline. I think this is the place. Each section I'll put it as a separate entity. That will be easier. So HTML, oh here, this also getting cut. This much also not coming. Okay. I don't know how many lines he supports. Mat form field. This is one section. Second set checkboxes, that should not be a problem. That is taken care. This should not be a problem. This is my select, multi-select. That should not be a problem. Because today I'll be busy on another work. So I'm gonna do the GitHub commit. But I just given you div by div. So it's all each block for you. So that might look simple and easy for you to cut and paste and work on it. Perfect. Okay. I just shared now all. You can use it wherever possible. Please go ahead and use it. Okay. Perfect. So that one. Component side. Component side, very simple. There is no much. It is all default. I am not changing anything there. Only inside the class component, I'm just pasting it here. Right inside the class component till whatever we have considered. We have done. This is my component side. Last. So this is within the class. Okay. So go through the previous topics if anybody is new. Thank you. I just leave it at that today. Practice well. That is what I can just request for. Other things I leave it to you. You are all senior enough to understand what is important and what is not. I leave it at that. Thank you. Is it recording stopped?